Hey everybody, welcome to our Lightbox EXPO stream called What Not to Do.
And everything else.
We'll be talking a little bit about personal projects and how you can monetize them and do more with them, such as launch a Kickstarter or start a Patreon. Last year we talked about our humble beginnings as artists, and we discussed some of our earlier art.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was embarrassing.
It was full of cringe, as it should be. And this year we decided to meet up in person because we're both fully vaccinated and we really missed each other.
Yep.
And we want to bring some of the vibe and energy of the original Lightbox Expo to you in this stream. So we are here in my living room to talk about this in person. And we'll be presenting some visual material alongside our stories. So let's get started.
Yeah. And this is a pre-recorded talk.
Right.
But we will be in the stream or in the chat, to answer any questions. So we're both live in the chat now. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat and we'll try and answer them just like last year. And we had a really great time doing that last year. So we thought about doing that again.
Yeah.
So enjoy. Yeah. Hopefully it's not going to take an hour or 2 hours. Hour and a half was that?
Hour and a half, yeah.
That was a
We'll try to
long
keep
one.
it short, which for us will probably mean slightly over an hour.
Teensy tiny.
We're aiming for that. All right, so let's get into it. All right, what not to do and everything else. So to start with, we really wanted to talk about our creative practice. So what do we do, in our artistic practice? How do we create and how do we generate the material that we kind of like end up using as the basis for our personal projects?
Yeah, and even how much of that time you spend a day drawing or doing something else, because it's your business. It's no longer a hobby. Has it ever been a hobby for you, by the way?
Most of my life until I decided to pursue it as a career. Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that was when you were 10 years old or something then.
No, actually, I didn't decide to pursue art as a career until I was 18.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was early. I was 7. I was like, I'm going to be an artist.
Yeah, I said that a couple times, and then people around me were like, you're going to have to, like, suffer throughout your life and never be able to make a living. So I was like,
suffering.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about my art. First of all, like, introduce it a little bit. So this is the kind of art that I'm known for, my digital paintings that I create. So these are pieces that take me a little bit more time to make. And, the aim is to try and, like, mimic a kind of painting effect on the computer. And these are sort of my portfolio pieces, really, that I put out there as a sort of, I guess, to be able to show people what I'm capable of, but I also really love creating illustrations.
Do you still feel the need to have a portfolio at your level? Because you are, you're hired for the work you've done so far, and you're saying this is my portfolio pieces. Do you still feel the need to have portfolio pieces in a sense? Or is this just to enjoy yourself? Because I see a lot of enjoyment in these as well.
Yeah. Well, I develop, like, so the next slide is sort of my rougher work, right? So these are like sketches that I do and studies and explorations. And I always want to have sort of like, whenever I do these sketches and explorations, to be able to show people what I've learned and to kind of apply it and kind of show people like what I'm capable of, I guess. And that's where these kind of pieces come in. So they are portfolio pieces, but maybe not in the sense of like, hire me for this project, but more like, this is what I can do.
And probably to challenge yourself to can I do this?
Yeah, because for me, the thing that I love about art is growing as an artist. It's like learning and picking up new skills is what makes it kind of thrilling and fun for me. So like, I love being able to draw, but the thing I love the most is being able to grow.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what that's why my art is a lot like a balance between rougher work and finished work. So you see that a lot in my artistic practice. And I also included a sort of like example of what a week would look like for me.
That's very structured.
Yeah. So for me, like I love structure.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who like, I love those planners, those kind of personal planners.
Oh, I bought one.
Yeah.
I still haven't used it. It's like 3 or 4 years old now. The only thing I filled in was my name and address.
That is the funnest part.
I can't do it. Even bullet journals and stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah. I do it all digitally, but I do love it because it just, for me, creates like a kind of, I don't know, if I don't have structure, I feel lost. I feel like I'm just not sure what I'm doing.
Too much in your head.
Yeah, too much in my head, right? So it helps me to kind of like, I don't know, get those changes of scenery. So my how I plan my creative time, it used to be different, right? When I was younger, I would draw whenever I felt like it, but now I kind of plan it in.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of other stuff, like errands that get in the way. So there's like, you know, so here in this kind of schedule planning, you can see incidental tasks. So I have like a time block every week for like those chores that build up, you know, like that thing you had to send out in the mail.
Smart. That's so smart.
Yeah.
To me, that just that's whenever I have time to actually do it, or not even time, whenever I feel like doing it.
Yeah, for me that moment never comes, right? So I need to plan it in. And I also have like my social media posts preparation is at a certain time, and I've got like tutorials that I make every month. So
I think that's so smart. I think it's so smart to plan your day like that, because it's you know what to do, when to do it, and even with the like Patreon posts and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean,
I'm completely the opposite of you, by the way.
yeah. So that's okay. So one more thing I wanted to mention. So on the right side, there's also like kind of a template, because one of the main things that's really important to me is to review my week. So every Monday, I kind of review the week before, and I think about, okay, what went well and what didn't, and what tasks didn't get picked up that I need to pick up, and what are the most important things coming up. And then I use that to kind of plan my week. And that has helped me the most, even in the most chaotic times, because you take some time to kind of like set your priorities straight. So if I know that like I'm behind on something, or I really need to make, or like I can also write like, okay, in the last week I felt like I wasn't really in touch with my creative practice, so this week I want to prioritize that. So that's really important to me. And you were saying that you're a little bit more, so I'll hand it over to you.
I love this, because you really think out beforehand, and you're really in structured that way. Whereas I'm kind of different. So this is my work desk. It's actually clean now. And I had to blur out certain things because I'm working on a project I can't share just yet. Ooh. But this is a clean desk for me. And on the other side of the room, there's actually my computer. But usually it's filled with these little tiny notes that have lists on them. So my day planner is lists, and whatever gets, like, I throw everything on it.
Yeah.
There's not really a structure as what is important. I know my deadlines for each project, and I know when something needs to be finished. But for some odd reason, my brain just doesn't work with fully structured, you have to do this at 10 o'clock. Because at 10 o'clock, when it's 5 to 10, I'm like, but I'm working on this right now, and I'm really enjoying it, and I don't want to stop doing this.
That's my reason for structuring it, because I get lost in whatever task I'm doing, and especially drawing. So once I get started on drawing, I get like, I don't know, I really sometimes feel like I'm floating in something. Like I lose touch. I usually have like a podcast or music on. I lose touch with my schedule, and then sometimes I snap out of it, and I'm like, oh, what time is it? Like, you know, what do I have to do? And if I still have to like go, you know, do groceries and cook dinner, I usually missed my chance to do that at a normal time. And then the rest of my day becomes chaos. But I think if you can do that and enjoy it and not have negative consequences from it, it's a really good way to work, because you get in the flow.
Yeah, definitely. But what do you do? Do you set an alarm clock to keep your out of that? Because it's difficult to pull yourself out of that flow. Yeah. So you needed something external to pull yourself out of that flow, don't you?
Yeah, I actually do have an alarm set for my social media posts, which is usually around 6 p.m., which is when I kind of finish my workday. And honestly, what really helps is that my boyfriend always calls me around dinner time and is like, so, what are we going to eat? who's gonna cook, and then we have to kind of negotiate
Yeah.
who does it, which is usually like something that snaps me out of it. And when he has other plans, I just like lose track.
Yeah.
So that's why the structure
That's
really
good.
matters
Yeah,
to me.
for me, so my day starts at about 7:30 a.m.
That is a good time.
Yeah, I start really early because especially since COVID, all my neighbors have been home and I live in this attached house. So I hear a lot of my neighbors, and I think a lot of people listening now have the same problems. They have parents at home or brothers or but neighbors that are there all the time.
Yeah.
And neighbors that get dogs and
Oh
kids.
yeah.
And so I try to do certain things as early as possible before people get like really noisy, and the noise starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon usually. So I plan my day around my neighbors these days, and it's so freaking weird to say, but that's how I do it. And I'm very I don't no longer respond to emails immediately. Like I you have to wait. I'll read through my emails. Spam goes right. I don't even look at my spam. I just delete it.
Yeah.
Any emails that want me to do certain things that I'm like, okay, well, you want me to do this for free? Nope.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It also really helps me to have limited time
Yeah.
to spend, because then if you're like spending more time than you have,
Yeah.
then you can leave the rest for another time.
Yeah,
right?
there's definitely you when you read your emails, you can see which is priority, which isn't. Obviously, the clients I'm working for at that moment are priority number one,
Yeah.
period, and you respond to that immediately. But I do that in the morning. Usually, I always check up on my social media in the morning as well, because most people have responded during my night, because I go to bed like 10 o'clock. I'm an old lady. I go to bed at 10 o'clock p.m. But I wake up at 6, so I need my 7-8 hours of sleep.
I think it's interesting that what you're saying is you're kind of explaining that you structure a lot of your time
Yeah.
around sort of like trying to manage distractions
Yeah.
and the things that come at you, because I think that every artist deals with that in some form or other.
Yeah.
Like people with children, people with larger families, people with pets, that they're like kind of figuring out how they can make their like set that time aside for your creative practice despite that things are coming at you, and you can't always block them out, but you can manage it, right?
Yeah, you can work around it because you know when something needs to is happening, and usually it's all external things happening that's not within me. So I don't structure my work days around or because I'm chaos and I can't, I have lists, but when I sit down to work, I usually, what am I in the mood for?
Yeah.
But my structure is very much, I get up at that time, I go to bed at that time. This is when I work best, deal best with bullshit. Just, we have bullshit
Let's
to
see
deal
some
with.
of your art.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm digressing. It's already,
No, but I think
we're
that tells
already
a really,
beginning, don't we?
I feel like your art is very much an extension of sort of this story, because your art has a sort of organic quality to it. Like it always feels very...
It's probably because it's all watercolors and
No,
traditional.
but it's also like you kind of go with the flow of your ideas and your imagination. So I can imagine that it's really important for you to be in a good mindset when you create.
There needs to be a flow. There needs to be a right atmosphere, and so I create almost every day if it's for a client. Like every single day, if I have a deadline, I have to work, and sometimes that means in the weekend as well. But when it's for myself, I haven't drawn in 3 weeks, I think. Just for myself, and that's okay. I'm not
Maybe
even
you're
freaking out.
recovering a little bit from some of your client work.
I've been very busy, so I'm trying, giving myself that time.
Because recharging is part of creating.
People always forget. They're always like, you have to draw, you have to draw, you have to learn, you have to... Yes, you have to draw, you have to learn, and you have to do all that stuff. But you also have to just chill and relax. And if you're
Rest.
already saying like, hey, you know, I just want to sit on the couch and veg out and just watch trash television.
That's my favorite
And
thing
go
to do to
for it.
recharge.
Anyway, I'm digressing. Well, this is some of the work I've done, I think last year. Yeah, this is, oh man, 2 years of COVID and I'm like already lost in space and time. But these first three.
It's all a blur.
Yeah, these first three are some magic cards I've done.
Beautiful.
And then some work I've done for Dark Crystal, which was really awesome.
Yeah, and your personal work is like
Yeah.
actually a lot rougher than your client work, huh? Usually.
Usually, well, the Dark Crystal one is like, you can see the Dark Crystal 3 things there. Those are quite like sketchy, and that's very similar to
Yeah.
my personal work. And that's why they asked me as well. But this is what gives me life, is just to that freedom, that chaos, and from that chaos it all works. And I'm not sure, yeah, that works best for me if there's too many constraints and too much structure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Then
It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and for me, it's really funny because there's like a YouTuber who kind of attacked me for this because he has like this American persona. And one time in an interview, I said that I hate freedom. And he kind of came after me. Probably some people will be commenting saying, why do you hate freedom? Sometimes people on Instagram are like, why do you hate freedom? But that's the context was that I really don't like it when there's a lack of structure. Like
Yeah.
I don't. So I told you earlier today when we were kind of having lunch that one of my clients once was like, why don't you spend a week just coming up with anything?
Yeah, but
and that's my nightmare.
People forget how absolutely freaking difficult it is to just work for a client who says, whatever you want, do it.
Yeah.
And
yeah. For me, I need some constraints. I need some structure.
But it also means that anything is possible. Like anything is possible. And some kind of framework is very useful when creating art. And it's even in personal work. I'm chaotic and you know, I have less structure, but in that chaos there's structure.
Yeah.
So I have my framework of what do I do, and you see the framework is fairies in this, or fantasy, or creatures. So there is a framework. That's a limited. I'm not doing sci-fi.
Yeah.
So there is a framework, and people are always saying like, "Oh man, you can do whatever you like," and that's actually such a difficult briefing to get from a client.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to crawl into the mind of your client and what do they want to see, and you have like 2-3 days to come up with concepts. But anything is possible. It's like you're basically just thrown. That's how I see it. You're thrown into the sea.
Yeah.
And you try to, like, you can either swim to that island or that island or that boat.
Yeah.
And they're all very far away. You don't know which one's closest. You're like, can I just, paddle here and not be eaten by sharks?
But I think it's good. Like, I think this is good to talk about because there are so many stereotypes about artists like being these extremely free spirits who cannot be constrained and who kind of live freely and are always creating. And I think what we're kind of talking about comes to show that that's not always the case, and that it's more about finding the balance between that creative freedom, but also accepting when you need more kind of structure and clarity and how you find that. So like artists aren't necessarily always like these quirky free beings. We're also just working, and like anybody else, you have to find the kind of approach to that allows you to be creative while still getting the job done.
Yeah, and for each artist it's different. Like each artist has a different way of dealing with things, and it's quite something to it's daunting to figure out, because online you get all these this is what you should do, this is and in a sense our talk is about everything you need to do, or what not to do and everything else. But basically what we're trying to bring across is that there's no set way. There's, like they say, there's more roads leading to Rome.
Yeah.
There's not one road to take, and I think that we were talking about this in the first talk we had last year as well. There's so many different ways to do this job.
Yeah.
And it's very important to never forget your own, your own gut feeling and your own
what works for you.
Yeah.
And everyone will be different in that.
Yeah. Let's go on.
Okay, so the personal projects, right? So that's something that I always kind of struggled with as an artist. As soon as I went to art school, that's sort of like when my relationship with art took a dark turn. Because
You
initially,
had to say that.
because initially I was like, I just love drawing. And then I went to art school and my teachers were like, this is wrong, and there was a lot of gatekeeping. So, and I kind of learned like, just liking art is not enough. You're gonna, go through some kind of ringer. And I went to animation school and I had a lot of classmates who were like, I have a bazillion ideas for an animation. They had a book full of ideas and they would like sketch out, they'd be like, this is the character of mine and they're going to be in all of these different universes and this is like a world that I've created. And I never had these ideas. I was sort of like, I just like to make drawings. And I like it when my teachers give me an assignment and I do the assignment and they say, good job. But I was not like generating ideas regularly. So, and I always felt extremely guilty about that. I felt like I was not really an animator. And so when I think about my personal projects, I still have a moment where I'm like, what are my personal projects? Because I don't really have, sometimes people are like, what if you had all the resources to develop your own movie? And I get nervous by that idea because I don't have ideas for a movie. I would rather have somebody else come to me with their idea and I help them develop it. For myself, I've come to realize that my personal project is just the art that I've made. I just like to create lots of art.
Fast personal project.
Yeah, so I've been making my own art, like stuff that I create for fun, for like, since I was in high school, which is, because I'm old, that's decades ago.
We're old. We're grandma.
That was before many of you were born. So I've been drawing for a really long time. And I've been putting that online for a really long time. And people have seen my art grow and change over those years. Yeah, decades. And and so that's my personal project. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Like I create a lot of art and I enjoy each drawing individually and then I move on to the next, right? So I don't have like a greater world really that I'm trying to develop specifically. I just am slowly working on an aesthetic and a workflow that feels good to me and I'm happy here and I want to stay here.
But I think that's the misconception of most, what people have about personal projects. Because personal projects don't necessarily have to mean creating a whole world or, being the next Disney or, you know what I mean. It doesn't have to be that big. A personal project can be super tiny. It can be making your own pin or design a set of postcards or anything really. And you could even say like, I'm gonna document the sunset every day for a year.
Yeah, it can be very small and that really, realizing that was liberating for me. Like I always felt like whatever I was making was not interesting because I hadn't developed a full story with a set of characters. And I eventually kind of started to let that go a little bit because, I noticed like there are a lot of creative thinkers who see my work and they're like, you could develop more with this. But there are also plenty of people who look at my work and they're like, well, I just like looking at it, And there are some people who don't like it. And it's sort of like everyone's different. And the most important thing that I found is like to find my own kind of flow.
Yeah.
And one thing that kind of came out of posting so often, because I was always drawing digitally, and digital art is a kind of like field of art where people have a lot of questions about it. It's very new. It requires some understanding of what is often perceived to be pretty complex software. And so a lot of people want to know how it works. A lot of people, I think, much like my perception of personal projects, they kind of overestimate what level of skill is required to make it. So I got a lot of questions from the beginning, like how do you draw that? What's your process? What techniques do you use? And I started kind of sharing more insights into my process because of that, because I really enjoy, like that's one of my favorite things to do,
Yeah.
is demystifying things that appear complicated from the outset and cause a lot of insecurity. And I can come in and be like, well, I also felt that way, but I figured out a way that works for me. So I like helping people out with that. So knowledge sharing kind of became a parallel thing alongside my art. And that kind of became a basis for many of my personal projects that I have now that I'll get into more later.
And this is what you did on DeviantArt, or?
Yeah, this is this is my first tutorial that I made. And it was for drawing in this like web browser software from decades ago. Akaki,
Yeah,
right.
Akaki,
And this is an Akaki tutorial showing how I would use this kind of like low resolution pixelated software. So this is kind of an overview of a lot of my art that's on DeviantArt. It's literally a screenshot of my DeviantArt gallery.
It looks so good.
Thank you.
It was like, when I saw that one, it's like, damn, Lois. Oh.
Yeah, I used to draw like these furry characters as well. You can see like she has ears and a tail.
Yeah.
It's another era. But
do it again. Do it again.
I still like it a
Go
lot.
back to your roots.
So yeah, this is like the kind of work that I consider to be my personal project. It's the volume of work that I've created and the sort of like knowledge sharing tangent kind of thing that came out of
but
that.
in a way, your world is these wonderful, beautiful ladies in dream-like settings. I feel that that's already a world. It's already, something. It's very recognizable. Lois, I can always spot the people who are very, very much interested and inspired by you. It's like,
yeah,
I can see that one.
I feel like it's a world that I'm very slowly expanding. Like I'd say like many concept artists jump straight in and create a lot of different aspects of the worlds that they're developing, and that I love to see it. But for me, I'm much more I'm much more stepping into it like as I expand my skills, which they are always growing, but they're growing slowly. As I expand them, I kind of like figure out ways to bring new things into that visual world.
Yeah, but you might be old, but you're not that old that you're
I still
already...
have some time.
Yeah, you have time to do this. And the last couple of years, I've been seeing you do a lot more landscapes and
that's
beautiful,
I'm really
beautiful
enjoying
landscape.
that. Yeah.
And you're putting your characters in there, and it's just absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
Gosh. Anyway, this is I saw your screenshot and I was like, I need to do a screenshot as well. This is a screenshot of my Instagram page from way back in 2016, I guess. And if you look closely, you can see there's like 2,500 followers. That was a lot for me. This is actually from beginning 2016, I think, or middle 2016, when I was basically just not getting any jobs, not getting any client work. Nobody wanted to work with me. Nobody liked me. Still don't, but
I liked your work back. I think
Did you?
We know each other from this Facebook group, and I've been following you for a very long time, especially since your early sketches. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't just...
Everyone's a stalker on the internet. Yeah.
We are. Well, I started out just, doing my stuff and not getting any response, nothing. And then I started doing these creatures, you see some mermaids. We had to blur out a lot of boobies, and I believe it's like
Twitch has really strict rules on
I realized I did a lot of nudity. Well, I still do, but it's all good. Anyway, it started with a June Fae and mermaid hashtags, and I was, if client work doesn't work out, I'm just going to do my art. So in a sense, my whole setup was the same as you. I just want to make art.
Yeah.
I just want to do my art. I just want to make art that I want to see in the world. So here's some more of those mermaids. Did we blur out those?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, guys. But this is where it all began, where I found myself, my voice again. And also, I didn't set out to have a personal project, because I had given up, basically. But when this began, I was seeing something, like I saw something that I wanted to explore, and I started doing also fairies, and dragons and trolls and whatnot. And that was the start of a personal project, which was actually kickstarted by people saying, okay, we love these sketches and we love your stories you're telling on Instagram. What are you going to do with that? I don't know, maybe a book. And well, it became a book. I did a Kickstarter in 2017, I think, and this is the result from that Kickstarter. And that is my world. That's a world that I created called Fairies of the Fault Lines, or the Fault Lines. And this book is the first in hopefully many more to come. I haven't got a clue how many. I haven't got a clue what's going to happen with it. That could be, I mean, you know, if anybody's listening, maybe an animation. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But this is something that came out of maybe desperation, of not knowing what to do, of not being able to work as an artist, or not being paid to work as an artist, and just thinking to myself, oh yeah, well, if nobody's paying me, I'm just gonna do whatever the hell I want to do.
It's actually amazing that what you were creating at that time was something you were doing purely for yourself.
Yeah.
And that sort of added to the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you were not doing it for the pressure, and
Not for the
I still
likes.
think 2,000 followers or 2,500 followers is a lot, but it's less than what you have now.
Yeah.
So maybe at that time you were feeling less pressure also from your own followers.
I've never felt pressure from followers.
Yeah.
I've never felt any pressure of have to perform. I have to perform, and I have to. I've been very quiet on social media this past year because I'm very busy with work, but also it's been overwhelming. Lockdown has taken its toll.
Yeah.
This is one of the first ever in-person meetups I've had in 18 months. So it's nice. We had cake.
Yeah.
But it's taken its toll, and you're tired. And we were talking about managing your time as well, and stuff like that. And I set out, COVID lockdown. Oh, I'm gonna learn a lot.
No.
No.
Everyone was too exhausted.
It's just, I was like, okay, you know what? It's okay to just not do it. So I've not been very active on social media.
But it is kind of good to get away from those pressures sometimes, because it does create that space that you're talking about, where you create for yourself and for your own growth.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to have that on the side of client work, because now obviously I do have client work, but I have to have that balance of personal work and client work. And client work keeps me in the framework and the structure.
Yeah.
And then my personal work is just me tinkering in my shed and casting resin sculptures and filling little bottles with crystals and stuff, and making tiny fairy bottles, and thinking, oh, I can do something with that. No idea. And then painting a new piece or whatever. But I need those moments of play. So in that sense, a personal project, we're always talking about how to monetize it.
Yeah.
A personal projects for me are very important to get your brain and your everything down and in balance and chill.
I think that's good to emphasize before we go into the next section, because the next part is about our actual projects that we've done, so how we've actually monetized those personal projects. But before we get into it, it's good to emphasize that sort of like the space in which you create the content for that personal project. For us, it's just been very important to allow that to organically grow. To create space for something to emerge which is authentic, and in which we can find sort of like an escape from a lot of pressures, and then you grab it all together and you jump into the high pressure
Yeah,
cooker
or you
that is
don't, or you don't.
crowdfunding.
There's
or you don't.
Or you don't. You don't
Yeah.
have to. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's also a thing we really wanted to say with
Yeah.
this talk is that you just don't have to monetize something and you don't have to pressure yourself into sort of doing more.
Yeah.
Making a hustle out of whatever you do is not a requirement. Not at all.
And
So if it's
sometimes-
something you want to do, you can.
Yeah,
And we'll talk
yeah.
about that. But don't feel obligated to if you're not ready, if you're not open for it.
Sometimes it's just good to have this thing that's just for you.
Yeah.
And just because you want it to be. And it doesn't have to, like I was telling you about those and mentioned those little bottles I was filling with crystals and herbs and stuff like that. I'm probably going to chuck those in orders and just have as a little gift. It's not but it's part of the fold lines, but it's not meant to make money. It's just
fun.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just having fun doing something, thinking up things that will, elaborate on the world. And I think that's very important. I never set out to make a book. I never set out to create that world. It just happened. And it just organically happened at the speed it happened at. And sometimes I think I would have liked to, hit the brake a bit. Like we'll talk about
We'll get
that.
into this. Let's go.
Yes.
All right. So so crowdfunding is an option that a lot of artists sort of go to when they are looking at ways to kind of finance and create their personal projects, because it gives you the opportunity to kind of test the interest in it. The idea behind crowdfunding is that, you come up with your project, you figure out how you're going to fulfill it, how you're going to make it happen, and then people can sign up. And if not enough people sign up for you to make your project happen, then no harm done. So it is very important with crowdfunding that you kind of know that risk. If you get into it, that you know that there's a chance that it might not work out, and that if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's part of like a learning process.
And it's also not a failure. Please do remind yourself of that. If it doesn't get funded, it's not a failure. There's tons and tons of artists doing this, and there's only so much money people can spend.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of crowdfunding. Gives you the opportunity to sort of test it out. I think a bigger failure would be assuming a certain kind of sales rate and then kind of losing a lot on that. But crowdfunding can be very challenging for that reason. You really have to, try and aim for that goal. My experience with crowdfunding has been through Kickstarter, and I worked with my publisher. So in my case, it wasn't like a fully self-run crowdfunding campaign. It was a campaign for my art book. So I have the real art books here. My first art book, The Art of Loish, that's this one. And then the sketchbook of Loish, my second book. And these are my sort of books that I created with my publisher. So my publisher approached me and they asked, are you interested in creating an art book? And the truth is that I had been interested in that for many years. So I'd been thinking about ways to make an art book happen for like 5 years prior, and I was having a very hard time connecting with publishers. So I would reach out directly to publishers and be like, hi, I'm on DeviantArt. Can I make an art book with you? And they were like, nope. Who are you?
Yeah.
So I had a very hard time finding anyone who was interested in working with me. So I just kind of decided I'll wait it out. Like I'll keep creating art and I'll figure out, like I know that I will eventually meet somebody who will be interested in working with me. And that's how I got in touch with Kickstarter, with 3D Total, because they had done a few projects with me before that, a few tutorial books that I created tutorials for, and they started to see more and more interest in these art books. And they reached out to me and they said, we will make the art book, we'll put together the content, and then we will put the project on Kickstarter to sort of, if we get enough on Kickstarter, then we can actually publish it. We can print it, we can send it out. And they would do the managing of the Kickstarter, which is a lot of work. So managing the Kickstarter is basically like you're getting all of these addresses, you're getting all of these different, so essentially you'll have many different tiers. I believe it's tiers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Rewards.
you'll have different rewards, right? So you'll have the in our case, we had the book, but we also had like a book with a print. We also had a book with a commission. So there were various options, and you need to keep track of them. And then you need to, probably months down the line, send stuff out. You need to make sure that like the postage is affordable.
Basically, your warehouse, your a lawyer,
you have to store things. You have to, so it's so much work.
Yeah.
And my publisher, I never considered a Kickstarter because I knew that was work that I would guaranteed not succeed at doing. Because I'm very organized and structured. Not organized and structured for that, though.
It's so funny because I didn't have a publisher. I did it all by myself.
Yeah, you did kind of the opposite scenario of me. So in my case, the publisher did all of that stuff, right? So we made the book. I did the writing and assembling the images, working on the layout, promoting the campaign.
Did you have a lot of thing like? Could you weigh in a lot? Like,
yes.
Normally when you're publishing with a publisher, they decide everything. They decide paper choice. They decide how the book is going to look. They do the layout. They do the type. Everything is their choice.
Yeah.
And in your case, how did that work?
That's why I loved working with 3D Total. They had a collaborative attitude.
Okay.
So they were very much like, we both need to be happy with this. You need to like it. We need to like it. Everyone needs to be happy. So we picked the font together. We worked on the layouts together. They presented the layouts. I would give feedback. I would say we could change this. They were open to all of the feedback because they were 100% committed to having everyone be happy.
Yeah.
And I was in over my head with a lot of things on the Kickstarter. So I hadn't thought about, for example, limiting the amount of signed copies. I assumed that maybe a handful of people would be interested in this book. Many more than I expected ended up signing up, and we had to shut down the number of signed copies. But I had to email out 3D Total and sort of go back on my deal with them, because I had said I will sign all the copies, and then I contacted them and I was like, all right, there's too many people going for these books, more than I expected. I can't sign all of them. And they were like, we understand. We'll figure out a solution for you. So they were endlessly accommodating, understanding. I changed my mind a lot. I would be like, this isn't working the way that I thought it would. And they always listened.
You basically had everything from a Kickstarter besides actually running the Kickstarter.
Yeah, they did like the real hard work. One thing that was kind of strange about like sort of launching that book. First of all, I didn't know how many people would be interested, and it turned out to be more than I thought. And then I didn't know what people would think of the book. So there was sort of a black hole, right? So the Kickstarter finished, and then the book was sent to print, and then many months of silence. And then I got a copy of the book, and I noticed, once I had it in my hands, it was this exact copy, actually. It was the number 1.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it has first edition number 1. I still need to sign it. I have to sign my own book. But I got this copy and I just didn't know what to think. I was like, I was too close to it. It was too close. So it really felt like my face was just an inch from it, and I couldn't get an overview, and I didn't know, like, would people be happy? Would they not be happy? I was nervous. And then in the sort of months after, like, people started posting photos of themselves with the book, and they were so happy. So these were 2 of the first photos on social media with this book.
It would be fun to have the people who I hope
these
people are here, actually.
I need to reach out to them, but like, I don't even know where I found these. I just remember seeing them and saving them, and then trying not to think about it because I had too much anxiety. I still thought that a lot of people would be like, this is garbage. What is this? Like, I thought people would hate it.
But that's the thing with, because this started out as a personal project, and it is so much of your own personal self and your own personal art and your way of working.
Yeah.
So it's basically your soul right there for everybody to trample on, and it's so nerve-wracking.
And so many of the creative decisions were kind of like intuitive ones.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that makes it very different from your experience, because you have like formal training in books.
Yeah, but it's still very much intuitive, and
but I have none, so I
Yeah.
didn't even know what I was doing. For me, it felt like I had sort of jumped into like a dark room, and I had like moved around, and I didn't know what I was doing, and that the lights would come on, and I wouldn't know what I had done. You know, that's really how it felt. But then positive responses came in.
Yeah.
And of course, I've had some criticisms on the book. So some people, there were some decisions that were made with this book. For example, we really chose, and that was a conscious choice, to keep it more affordable. So the book is much more of like a very accessible book with tutorials and tips at an affordable price, because I wanted it to be something that was attainable for my younger audience.
I mean, that makes sense. This is a book about learning how to step into digital art. There's no sense in making that very expensive, because that's cutting out so many people who want to learn.
Yeah, and you've got the collectors who want to pay maybe like $100 for a book, and they want something very beautiful. And I love those books too. I have some of them. But that wasn't what I was going for.
This is not that book.
Yeah. So, but in the end, it worked out. I feel like people are still quite positive about the book, and most importantly, I feel like the target audience understands what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter, the thing that I'm most happy with, that I really have to credit, I have nothing but good words for my publisher, but this is like the thing that I love the most, is that they managed to create a really fun collector's item out of the Kickstarter edition. So you can still get my book. You can get it like from Amazon, you can get it through 3D Total, you can get it in some bookstores. But if you got it through the Kickstarter, you got a special mailing carton.
Yes, I still have that one.
Yeah, and it kept the book in very good condition, which when I order books, it's always a challenge to get it like, unharmed.
Yeah.
The book was in very good condition. It came with like a playing card set. It came with stickers, the second one. It came with a bookmark and a print. And it really very much felt like something like a fun package that felt like a part of a whole. And that is something that my publisher did incredibly well.
Yeah.
I would have never been able to work this out.
I backed your campaign, of course.
Thank you.
Tried to learn digital, still can't do it. So I need to take personal lessons, I think. But I still have the packaging it came in, because I thought that was so brilliant. So it also means less waste.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep it. It's beautiful, and it keeps the book safe. It keeps everything together. The playing cards are in there. Everything's together, and I really enjoy that. And I actually looked into that. For my own book.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford to.
Oh yeah.
It was too expensive.
Bonus.
Yeah, it was too expensive for me to do this.
Yeah, so that's what I want to really point out with my campaign, because obviously it was like a dream campaign, because my publisher did a lot, right? But I also spent like 5 years not releasing any kind of art book because I hadn't found something that worked for me. So if we tie it back to kind of the theme of the talk, what not to do, I think if you're somebody that knows that you can't handle very complex lists of potential clients, postage, like the more complicated aspects, packaging, if you're somebody who really struggles with that, because for me, I just can't do it. Like I've tried it and just I can't, and I'm also
things are complicated. They really are.
And I think if you know that that's something you can't do, it's okay to say like, that's where my limitations, that's where I've got limitations, and to maybe turn in some of that, you're aiming to make maybe more money with a Kickstarter project by doing everything yourself, but to consider maybe like just getting somebody else, getting a company, getting an assistant. So of course, those are not all affordable options. And if you can't afford it, it's okay to just keep it as simple as possible so that it's within the scope of what you can do.
All of these things are things that you can calculate into your Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So that's also a thing. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to run a Kickstarter. And one of the first things I always tell people to do is, if they are thinking about running one, is look at successful Kickstarters. Just do your research. Look at successful Kickstarters.
Yeah.
How did their campaign look like? What did it look like? And look at Kickstarters that didn't make their goal.
Yeah.
Look at and
factor in your own limitations.
Yeah,
like don't go beyond your limitations. Like if you need to keep it simple, don't be afraid to keep it simple.
My advice would always be keep it simple, because I have some things to tell you what not to do. So I did a Kickstarter as well for this book. This is the first one. This is, well, it's not the first one. I actually signed it and drew a picture.
Oh, yours is complete. I love it. It's a beautiful book. I have your book as well. It's an incredible collector's item.
Yeah, this is now the collector's item. There's 2,500 pieces of these, and they're all sold out.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new one. Anyway, this is the book that the Kickstarter was for, and as you can see, if you zoom in, that book was completely funded. I needed 15,000 euros. I ended up with 111,000. Wow, which was insane. Never seen so much money. It is insane. Almost 1,700, like a little over 1,700 people backed it. I had a setup, like I never set up a Kickstarter before. I didn't know how, so I did a lot of research.
You truly jumped into the deep end.
I jumped, like I didn't even know this was going to work out. Like I thought, well, maybe 300 books sold.
Same.
And then, I'll have 500 printed. And well, you'll see the numbers. It's like, it's insane. There's so many people that backed it. And I didn't expect that. Totally didn't expect this. But I did my research, did a lot of number crunching, because one of the things that always goes wrong in Kickstarters, when people have to do a Kickstarter and it goes wrong, it always seems to go wrong with shipping.
Yeah.
Shipping is the thing that's the worst, because basically that number you see there contains shipping costs as well. So you have to pay your everything out of that. Like that's not even what I got. Like Kickstarter takes its cut. Kickstarter takes a cut. PayPal takes a cut. Credit card companies take a cut. So everybody takes something from that pile. And then when you're doing your Kickstarter, you have to figure out shipping costs to USA, from the Netherlands to the USA, from the Netherlands to Sri Lanka, from the Netherlands to Peru. Whatever country, you have to figure out what the shipping is. And shipping goes insane. And
it's gotten worse since COVID.
It has definitely gotten worse. There's new laws, there's new regulations. Last year, I think shipping was changed. Like shipping costs changed 3 times in a year. Normally it's in January, there's new shipping costs. So all these things you have to keep in mind and you have to factor in. So these are very important things to keep in mind. Is that's the one thing that keeps me from running another Kickstarter on my own. It's just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of painful.
And I guess the main, as a rule of thumb, you have to have the courage, I think, to charge a lot for that shipping. And disappoint some people. But if you don't charge extra for that shipping, it's going to cut into your profits. And you may not end up making a profit. So with the shipping stuff, you can't carry that on your own, right? You have to charge for it.
Shipping also includes storage.
Yeah.
The cardboard box it comes in, the plastic sleeve it's protected with, the amount of time you're working on it to package it. So that's all these things you have to factor in. So people are complaining about 20 euros shipping cost, which is $22 probably, $25 maybe.
Yeah. Which is a lot. But
it is a lot.
But compared to maybe a business like Amazon, which we can't compete with as individuals.
Because we can't compete with those rates. We can't go to a shipping company and say, well, I've got 2,000 books to ship. And they're like, they'll look at you. I've tried. Trust me, I've tried. They'll look at you like, okay, no, this is still 25 euros for you. It's like, But those things, all of that information is in that number of 111,000, and I think 60 or 70,000 euros was just shipping.
Incredible. So just definitely factor that in. And be sure that if you have a successful Kickstarter, you may think that you've made it, but successful Kickstarters have the most challenges when it comes to these issues. So always keep that in mind and prepare for a worst case scenario, which may be success.
Definitely, because a lot of people go wrong here and they end up paying out of pocket
Yeah.
for shipping. And trust me, you do not want to do this because you'll have a successful Kickstarter, but you'll be in the negative.
Yeah.
And it's not even funny. But yeah, my campaign was a success, and I had none other than Mr. Del Toro tweet about it and back the campaign, and then
Proud of you.
yeah, I was posting on. It went live on 21st of June, and it went live, and it was still posting on social media when friends were already commenting, it's completely funded.
Yeah.
It was not even an hour in and it was funded 48
Incredible.
minutes.
Yeah.
So I posted that really ugly picture of myself.
No, that is
crying.
not an ugly picture. That is
That
such an
was like-
authentic picture. I can just feel your emotion looking at it.
So what the...
It's great.
I couldn't understand the love that this project was receiving.
Yeah.
So 5 hours in, we were, how many? Like 5 hours in, we were 200% funded.
Incredible.
5 hours in,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like I had 30,000 euros 5 hours in.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
And then these are some of my tears.
Oh.
That was,
Oh, you had a lot of tears.
I had a lot of tears. One of the things
Oh
I want
my.
to tell you, do not have this many tears, people. This is too much. And
Yeah.
I thought, beginners, people want choices. They want
Right.
choices. Someone postcards, other one prints. Don't do it. Keep
This is
it
a pattern.
simple.
Yeah, this is a pattern I'm familiar with, because as an artist, you think like, oh, I don't know if people will like it. Maybe I really have to encourage people to get it with these goodies. And the truth is that people will, if your Kickstarter is successfully funded, it will most likely become funded because people are interested in the core product.
Yeah.
So you want to keep it manageable, simple, and also easier for the backers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do have to say that I believe Kickstarter has changed its system. So it no longer has like all these tiers, but it has add-ons. So
See,
you
and that's way
you
better.
pick the main thing and then you choose the add-ons
Yeah.
you would like. So
That's-
that does make it easier.
Because I'm like, if ever I do another Kickstarter, this is never going to happen again,
Yeah.
people. This is
Yeah.
not going to happen again. One, I do not want to create so many things, like things that would be, it's too much.
Yeah.
Do we need this amount of crap?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
but
and
another-
also, does it add anything to really what you're
it
trying
doesn't.
to do?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It actually, I still stand behind everything I created that was added to it, but it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
It doesn't need it.
So keep it simple, is
simple.
like the main advice I think that
Keep it
applies
simple.
to many different
Absolutely.
parts of the process.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Book and something else. But also, you said kept your signed editions.
Yeah.
Limit the time you give away free sketches.
Oh, you have.
I gave away free sketches
You
for
drew
the
free
first.
sketches in books that ended up getting sort of damaged in the mail.
Yeah, but I mean that was difficult. But what was even worse is that I never thought this would be a success. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, I'll do an special early bird thing. First 48 hours of the launch, people will get a free sketch.
Yeah.
I'll get 15,000 euros in 48 hours
Which
eventually.
which may explain the huge success of
don't
your
know.
Kickstarter in the initial hours.
But I ended up doing 700 sketches.
Yeah. I don't think I even make that many sketches in a year.
Well, I did in 2 months.
Incredible.
It took my voice is just,
The memories.
I'm feeling
you
it.
just aged 10 years
I'm
thinking back on it.
Feeling it. But do not do this. Do
Yeah.
not. Be careful with that, with your
You
promises.
must trust that people are interested in the main product that you're
Yeah.
kickstarting for what it is, and to not overcompensate.
Oh, I
with-
definitely overcompensated.
Yeah.
I definitely, and I don't regret it eventually. But
But
it
you
was,
wouldn't do it again.
No, I would still do 3 sketches, obviously. But
Or like maybe early bird, like first 30
Yeah.
minutes situation instead of 48
That-
hours. Yeah.
But the fun thing of me doing the whole thing by myself is that I could offer people this. This is what I went to the printer.
Yeah.
I was there at the printer to see the book being made. I
Yeah.
could show that to my backers, how the book is being made.
Yeah.
This is something most people do not know.
Yeah. And
They-
we weren't able to do that in our Kickstarter because we work with like a big printer who just, they print it out.
Yeah.
And that's what you
Yeah.
get.
Yeah,
And I'm very happy with how it worked out, but we didn't get the chance to really do what you did,
Yeah.
which is very stringent quality control and working with local printers.
I worked with local printers. I was very much aware of, I wanted, the footprint as small as possible. I wanted quality. I was a graphic designer for 16 years, so I knew what materials I wanted. I knew the finish. I knew I wanted this, there's a ribbon, there's this little thingy here.
Those are the touches that make
It's
it a
everything,
collector's
and
item.
the book just opens up. There's this fold out in the middle. Everything is done with thought, and it's thought out. The paper is special. It's better for the environment. Blah blah blah. Better inks. That's it. That was made it very expensive to make, but it's a choice, and I choose quality.
Yeah.
And what you see there, and top button for, is it button right or button left? What is it?
What do you mean?
The boxes.
Oh, right, the boxes.
Those are all the books that needed
Yeah.
to be signed, sealed, delivered,
Oh
anything.
my, incredible.
But then
That must have like given you just a heart attack. looking
yeah,
at it.
yeah. That's another thing. If we go back, that's in. I had to rent a space to put all these boxes in.
Yeah, storage is a thing.
Storage.
Yeah,
And-
with books, definitely.
Yeah, because 2,500 books wouldn't fit in my home.
And
it
I know of
actually-
artists who have done art book Kickstarters and kept it in their home
Yeah,
and lived
yeah,
amongst
yeah.
piles of books and boxes.
Oh, I did that eventually because
Yeah.
I got a couple of boxes of books and then went home and then drove to and fro. But the thing is, this is such an amount of paper and weight. My home would actually be damaged by this weight.
Your house was not calculated on
My
these.
house wasn't calculated on this weight, so I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. So I had to rent a
Yeah.
space. That's another cost.
Yeah.
I had to insure all
Yeah.
those books and all those items because once they're printed, they're actually capital. They're, that's the product that people paid for.
Yeah.
And if something happens, there's a fire, there's a flooding, there's a mice eating from the books, then it's gone. And I need to reimburse those people with the money.
Yeah.
So insurance,
Yeah.
something nobody ever talks about.
Yeah, and it all
Insurance.
factors into the cost as well, right?
Yeah.
Because my publisher has like warehouses because they've expanded a lot since I first started working with them, and they have warehouses internationally. So they have on various continents like different warehouses, which also makes it more affordable, right? But that's something that as an individual is not attainable.
Nope.
So you do have to, if you're doing it yourself, you have to factor in those costs, and you must charge for the quality of a unique collector's item
Yep.
that is made independently.
Yep.
Like you cannot undercharge for the incredible amount
Nope.
of work that you do,
No.
which you didn't do in the end.
No.
No.
You see here some of the sketches I did. These
Yeah.
are just 5 of the 700 and plus.
You're
Then
a machine
I
for
was
real.
I was 2 months, and this was during a heat wave, guys. And I did it all by myself. I didn't have anybody helping me doing the packaging. So every single book, every single order was packaged by hand by me.
Incredible.
And during a heat wave,
Your perseverance amazes me.
I was
Because
just-
I think there are a lot of Kickstarters where the creators may have sort of faded into obscurity
I
because
have
they hit this
heard,
wall
yeah.
and weren't able to complete what they did, which is like, honestly, no judgment for me. I know how hard it is, but at the same time, then you enter a new process of refunding and managing.
I'm going to judge you a little bit because you made a promise.
Yeah.
You took people's money, and people work hard for that money, just like I work hard for the money I receive.
Yeah.
And I feel responsible to take, like, they are my customers. They need to be taken serious.
Yeah.
And they trust me. And I felt so bad that the Kickstarter was going over my timed what I thought I needed, the time I thought I needed. But in everything that you do for Kickstarter, open communication. Always tell
Right, that
your
is very
backers what is going on.
Yeah.
Be open, be honest, don't ghost them, don't go away, no,
Yeah.
doesn't exist, don't be an
Yeah.
ostrich.
Because
like,
it's very common, especially when you may have underestimated the workload,
Yeah.
that there will be delays,
Yeah.
that there will be unexpected twists and turns, and you have to let people know,
Yeah.
and you have to stay in open communication with them.
And because this project, I never thought this would be such a success. And because of the success, I had to, like, 48 pages extra were added. 48 extra pages needed to be drawn.
Yeah.
That's 48 pages of art I needed to make. That was, there were so many new things added to it because of the success.
Yeah.
That took more time.
Yeah,
more
that's
time.
the main thing that you'll see in any kind of like article or YouTube, because like we're offering our tips and insights on campaigns like this, from an honest perspective. But there are also a lot of excellent resources for that will run you through the steps and like run you through the exact, that are more like how-tos, like those kind of very important resources that are a big part of the research. And they'll always mention things like scalability. Like you have to think about how your project will scale. So you have to think about if it gets bigger or if it gets smaller, how does that affect your workload?
And I read all those articles,
Yeah.
but it didn't register.
Oh, yeah.
It
So
did.
hopefully this will help a little
I
bit.
didn't like. I read that and I was like, oh, that's never gonna happen to me.
Yeah. We artists are incredible at
It's never gonna
underestimating
happen to me.
ourselves.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. Well, take this as a this could happen to you, and if this happens to you, this means you'll go over. So always factor in.
Yeah.
If you think, oh, I'll be done by August, just say October.
Yeah.
Shipping costs. You have to, if it's $22. Factor in those extra $3, $25. That it's not like you're not stealing anything, because you have to. We talked about it. It's the box. You have to drive to the post office. You have to do. In my case, you see that big lorry there full of the books. That's everything I needed to do. Like I packaged every single book and then drove every single day with lots of books packaged in my car every single day, and went to the storage unit, packaged it on pallets, just wrapped around with a cello wrapped sellotape, whatever it's called. And people at the end of the campaign still, had packaged everything, and people were, oh, I've just moved. Can you change my address?
Yeah, I think if you're at the very maximum of your ability of what you can handle,
still-
then the smallest thing will set you off.
I went to the storage unit, like it's 11 o'clock in the evening, because I got an email from somebody who just, I forgot to give you the right address. And I remember seeing their names.
Yeah.
And I knew where on the pallet it was. So I was able to just, go through it all, pick it up, take it out to the address. So I did that all.
Yeah.
And then, when some of the books arrived in the USA, I didn't put any photos of that in this slideshow, because it still breaks my heart. But a lot of these books got caught in a hurricane or bad weather in the USA, and it just I got photos from people, and it looked like they were just dunked in a bucket of water for a week, and they were all moldy and broken, and it's just I cried so much.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
But you have to reimburse those people. You have to refund them. You have to send them a new book. So that's also something you have to factor in. There will be books lost.
Potential replacements.
Yep. You have to have extra books, extra everything, or you have to reimburse them completely.
Yeah.
So, and then we have taxes. That's another thing. After everything's been paid, the Dutch tax government, the Dutch government says, "Oh, you've made so much money, did you?"
Yeah.
We didn't make money, but you know,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's so easy to spend
Yeah.
and to think, "Oh, they just put that much money on my bank account. I'm gonna give a party and have fun." No, people, this is payment for this entire process, and I didn't even factor in my workload or my months I couldn't work.
So how can we whittle this down into a simple tip? We're over an hour now. We can whittle it down to the tip of overestimate your success rather than underestimate it. If you don't hit your goal, it's okay. It's all right. A lot of people don't hit their goal. It's part of your process. If you do hit it, if you've overestimated the time, the money, the success, if you've overestimated it, then you can scale your project with these kind of unexpected twists. Because from the outside, it might look like, oh, you've done this incredible Kickstarter and made so much money. And behind the scenes, you know that it's so much more complicated. A lot more ups and downs. In my Kickstarter too, many replacement copies had to be sent out because of issues like that. So always keep that in mind.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to move on to a sort of last section.
I mean, we're already so over.
Oh, that's okay. But that was the core of what we wanted to talk about, right? Really those ups and downs and potential pitfalls of these bigger projects. And I think we both have a totally different perspective to bring to it. Because and
it's important to have this real, you can read all those articles and they're wonderful. You have to read all the articles.
Yeah.
But it's also very important just, to hear the real story.
Yeah. Yeah, the behind the scenes stuff. And really quickly, we wanted to also talk about our Patreons, because that was another way for us to kind of look at monetizing or making it possible to continue doing our personal projects, but much less, a Kickstarter is a very explosive experience, right? It launches, it has limited time. There's a lot of pressure in a short amount of time, and it also just ends at a certain point and it's just over. And Patreon is much more of an ongoing, kind of more slow growing type of... It's
more like if you're working for a boss.
Yeah.
If you have a client and you perceive your patrons as clients, you're giving them something in return.
Yeah, with steady deliverables, and also the launch of a Patreon is never as exciting and it doesn't have an end date in the same sense. So it's much more of an even paced thing. And for me, it's become a really big part of what I do because it has made it possible for me to prioritize my personal work. So I have a Patreon where I kind of funneled the lessons. It took me a very long time to launch it, but I kind of funneled some of the lessons from the Kickstarters that I've done into this Patreon as well. And I learned that keeping it simple was the most important thing. I've learned that having many different options and tiers and different ways of drawing people in is tiring for me to maintain.
It's tiring for me as well.
So I did one tier only. It's a $5 tier. I actually have to give some credit to the people over at Patreon because I had some talks with them before I started. So a fellow artist kind of connected me with someone working at Patreon, and I had a sort of a talk with them before sort of finalizing my idea, and they said that the simpler Patreons do better because they're more sustainable, and that you can always expand. So that's how I started out. So it was kind of their idea, and that's how I did it. And within that single tier, that single membership level, I offer, I give people a first look at my art, but most importantly, I use that as a way to kind of generate the learning material that many people have been asking for. And, making that learning material and getting, that income in exchange for that, it feels very satisfying to me. It's very much because making a tutorial is a ton of work. But it's very worthwhile if you're going to get paid for it right up front, right? So I do a lot of learning content, step-by-step stuff, tutorials, all of that. And I've used it as a way to, really explore and expand my skills. So I was drawing a lot of just mainly character art for a really long time. And I was doing that for my client work as well. And because of the Patreon, I started doing more environments, more studies, sort of tackling some of my least favorite things like perspective, drawing plants, trying to bring more things into my artistic universe because I finally kind of have the time to do that. And what I really like doing is kind of challenging myself to learn something new, which I always love to do. In the case of this painting, I was really hitting a wall with how to do the scales of the snake, the skin. And then as soon as I figured something out, I can instantly share that with others. So I can not only learn new things, but like share it with people, which is really great and satisfying for me. So that's what I use my Patreon for most of the time. And for me, it works really well because it's allowing me to generate more of that personal project content. I've created actually way more personal art in the last year and a half that I've had my Patreon than many years before that. So it's giving me the time to jump into it, learn more, and also just, I don't know, create like a sort of financial basis for doing this sort of stuff. So shout out to my patrons, of course, because you guys make everything possible for me. And I love having a Patreon. So that's how it's been for me. And now to you.
Yeah, for me it's very different. Again, at the moment my Patreon is on hold, paused, because of client work. I'm full time working for Netflix and stuff like that. So I cannot add. I don't have time to do personal work, or a lot of time to do personal work. I just like to veg out sometimes. I need space. So I felt very, very uncomfortable asking, people to pay when I don't have content. And when I started out, I had more tiers than this, and I had a lot of tiers that included original artwork. So in the top row, you see some of the artwork that I did, and I did like 40 sketches each month for people. And they were unique every time. Sometimes I'd give them a prompt, or sometimes they'd give me a prompt, and it became after a couple of years of doing that and hundreds of sketches, on top of the Kickstarter book sketches, by the way, it became too much for me. So I whittled those down, and I know a lot of people wanted the cheap original art, but didn't I was empty. It wasn't working anymore.
It's one of those things where like it works for a small group of patrons.
It does for a small group of people,
and that patron group grew so much that it became very heavy on you.
Yeah, and it's every month, and it's just too much. So I just stopped doing it because I just couldn't. But people can still get discounts in the shop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what I share is my exploits in sculpting and my exclusive behind the scenes of dark crystal, things that I don't really share on social media all that much. It's just on Patreon is like the in-depth thing.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that connection with patrons. And when I am ready to go back and unpause this, I'm gonna restructure it again and make it more simple.
Yeah.
And probably that, I don't have tutorials like you. I don't really enjoy doing tutorials. They're very complicated to create when you're doing traditional media.
Yeah.
You have so much more setup, and I do not enjoy having a camera on top of my artwork, because there's a camera in front of me when I'm working, and it just creates a barrier, and it disrupts my flow. It doesn't work for me. So for some people this works, for me it doesn't. So I'm still trying to find ways to do tutorials, but there's tutorials on there, but there's only so many you can do.
It's not going to be your central focus.
No,
if you can choose what you're going to focus something like this around, it wouldn't be tutorials.
It wouldn't be tutorials, and it's more of an exclusive sneak peek at things and how I do explain how I work with materials, and I show what's going on. I show my materials, I show my books, I show inspiration, where my ideas come from, that kind of stuff. It's more of a more in-depth.
It's like a little fan club that you can share
Yeah.
the exclusive stuff with.
Yeah, we even have a secret handshake and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
A
yeah,
logo.
yeah. But my Patreon is it definitely helped me when I was still working as a graphic designer, and I was like, okay, now gonna quit my job. I had my Patreon, which pretty much basically covered my
Your bills.
my bills,
Yeah.
like the basic bills like insurance and stuff like that. Nothing much,
Yeah.
but it just made sure that I had enough to pay my bills, and everything else was paid by client stuff.
Yeah.
So my Patreon is my lifesaver, and oh man, I'm gonna go back very soon,
Yeah.
hopefully.
But that's also, I think, a very good tip to give anybody who's considering starting a Patreon, because unlike a Kickstarter, there's no harm in starting one. You
No.
can start one anytime.
And you can
Yeah.
pause in if you
Yeah, you
feel
don't
like,
have to
"Ugh."
pay to start one. You just you
Yeah.
have to give a cut of your profits, right? But if you don't make any profits, then you don't lose anything
No.
either. So it's fairly low risk, and anybody who's been on Patreon for a longer period of time will tell you it's always changing and growing. You'll get new ideas,
Yeah.
you can reassess, you can change your course as you change, as your demands change, and as your
Yeah.
creative needs change.
And
So
it's very important to say, because you had, and I remember us talking about this in the cafe when we met up, and you hadn't launched your Kickstarter, your Patreon yet, and I was like, it's gonna do so well. You're gonna, first week you're gonna do blah blah, that many, and I still remember I'm sending you an app like, I told you so.
yeah.
And it launched.
Just like with my Kickstarter, I
Yeah.
didn't think anyone would
Told
be
you so.
interested. Yeah.
But you had a good following from the launch. There's a lot of people that launched this that do not have
Yeah.
2, 3, maybe 4 people.
Yeah.
That's the max. So don't promise a tutorial video every month to 4 people. It's just so much work
Yeah, you
and
have
time.
You have to make it something, I think, especially if you're starting out without a big following, to start small and just like allow it to grow.
Yeah.
There are many artists. I follow a handful of artists who gained popularity through Patreon.
Yeah.
So when they joined Patreon, they were small artists, and through Patreon, they sort of grew a community, and that community told other people about that Patreon or started posting the stuff that they were making in Patreon challenges on their social media, and it grew from there, and they sort of developed their artistic voice through their Patreon. So it is possible to start very small. That's the added value of a Patreon versus a Kickstarter. So if you've got a very small following and you're looking for ways to kind of monetize your personal project, I would say choose a Patreon first over a Kickstarter and allow it to grow and kind of see where it goes from there. It just gives you more room to experiment and learn.
Yeah, you can have it it's almost like a diary of your personal project.
Yeah.
That's just people that are part of a patron. And then when things pick up and you decide to do a Kickstarter, you could give your patrons a special, teaser or special something extra when they back the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
It
and
could be fun.
through a Patreon, you'll learn a lot of essential things that are also very important for a Kickstarter. So for a Kickstarter, it's really important to do like some market research and to think about ways to market your project. So you have to kind of get the word out, right? You have to maybe use your social media for that or word of mouth. And if you're starting a Patreon, you also have to do that. Like, Patreons don't become successful on their own usually. You have to like get the word out to your network, and you have to find ways to market it and make it interesting and just kind of like advertise your own project. And if you do that with your Patreon, you'll learn these essential skills for marketing that you can later use for a Kickstarter or like a crowdfunded project.
Yeah.
We keep saying Kickstarter, but there are obviously many different crowdfunding platforms available.
There's Indiegogo. You have to just do some, just
to
do
figure out what
research
works
and
for you.
and in your area, and there's tons of things.
Yeah, but Patreon is a good kind
And
of like breeding ground, like a good sort of
man.
starting point for the growth of like monetizing your personal project if you feel ready to take that
Yeah,
step.
and we are just scratching the surface because we could talk about this for 3, 4, 5 hours probably.
Yeah.
Because there's things like after Kickstarter, you can work with Pledge Manager or BackerKit or
Right.
all those things to manage your pledges at the end of the thing when you have to send out stuff. There's all these companies that help you with that. But again, there's tutorials, there's write-ups, written-ups, whatever it's called. It's been over an hour. I'm the comic relief right now. There's tons of information to be found. And again, just, drop a question in the chat.
Yeah, of course. We're happy to answer any questions. If there are still people watching by this point.
it's crickets. We're probably talking to the dog and cat.
They all moved on to the next talk. All right, so we really quickly wanted to wrap up by talking about our future plans. What are we going to do in the future? We've both done some bigger projects and...
World domination.
Yeah, obviously. But what
next?
else? For me, I've got my third art book coming up. So I'm working with the same publisher again. I'm making a similar book. I've always wanted to make a trilogy of my book. I don't know why, but I always think in terms
Lord
of
of the
three.
Rings.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading a high school diary the other day that showed my just hopeless obsession with trilogies, Lord of the Rings and The Matrix. It's very much into The Matrix. But for me, things come in threes, that makes the most sense. So I always every time I made one book, I always thought about what would I do in the next book? And so my third book, I really wanted to just really go that deeper level. My art book was very much like a first book. It was very much like, all right, how do I start, talking about my art and what I do? And my second book's very much about my rough art. And for my third book, we really wanted to go to the more fundamental theme of what motivates me, what are the sort of reasons why I draw the way I draw. And another reason for making this book is it's going to be called The Style of Loish. It's going to be focusing on my style. Another big reason why we're doing a book on style is because it is really important, often discussed topic among social media artists. I've noticed that very young artists just starting out are already asking, how do I find my style? Which I think is something that people tend to rush into. They think that they have to brand themselves from a very early stage and find a sort of definitive style early on. So this book addresses a lot of those questions, how do you find a style? It has exercises to help you find your style, and it has a lot of information about where does a style come from and where did it come from for me, and to what extent do you have to force it, things like that. I'm really excited about it because it has a slight self-help touch to it.
Yeah, you told me about that.
And I love self-help books. And I want self-help books I want there to be more of those in the art community that give you kind of tools, to get a better sense of your artistic practice and give you structure and lots of bullet journals and things to do. So,
bullet journal.
Yeah. And I want to focus more on traditional art. So I've been doing a lot of digital art. In the creation of my third art book, I have been spending a lot of time behind a computer screen, typing, planning, dragging files around, creating digital art. And I've been feeling a strong desire to kind of go back to paper and pencil and the feeling of just the tactile sense of working
the
traditionally.
Good stuff.
And
Sorry.
I think the urge, for me, the urge to learn something new, because this is not my area of expertise by any means. So that's...
You wouldn't say that. I mean...
I only show you my best work.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to show you my failures. Anyway, so I want to get more into this. So that's kind of what the future holds for me, I think, is wrapping up that third book and then taking some time to do maybe a bit what you did with the fairies, which is go back to something you really want to do and that you do for yourself. That's what I'm craving. All right, and you?
Well, I'm just gonna go and live in a abandoned a hut in the middle of the forest and with some cats and dogs and pigs and stuff like that. That's my future. But for now, this is the future. This is the bigger version.
Yeah,
This
so
is-
that's like the original collector's item version, and this is like the
new-
version that
the
people
new-
can now buy.
and even at Walmart, will you believe that? And Target, they have it.
Walmart and Target.
Right, that's so
My
weird.
gosh.
Anyway, the book sold out so quickly that well, not this one.
Oh,
Hopefully,
I was like, that's fast. I think you
Hopefully.
officially launched it a few days ago.
No, it's launched a couple of days ago or weeks ago, and I've been getting all these pictures of people having the book, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is so cool, thank you. No, this book sold out really quickly, and people were still asking me how, where can I buy it? Where can I buy it? I want it. I was like, I haven't got any, and I wasn't really feeling. Then I didn't want to go through all of that again, like distributing and doing everything, and because I'm not I'm an artist, I'm not a distributor, I'm not all of that. So I wanted the book to be published. I wanted to find a publisher, and I had this book already, and it was my calling card. It's like, this is the book, this is what we need to do. And I had a big publisher interested, but they wanted to change the entire book basically. I was like, nope. That's not going to happen. So I decided, I found a really good publisher, small publisher, but they gave me full control. So it's pretty much the difference is like size. Mm-hmm. We have the new cover, but this is still.
They still have
it's
that.
It's still the same.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
Wow.
And then paper is still the same. The only difference is there's 16 pages extra, so we have more art.
Yeah.
More art.
Great.
So yeah, that's the future. That's now. I've had Tony Dittolizzi write a praise quote for it, write a blurb. I have John Howe write a blurb for it. I had Guillermo del Toro write something for it. Yay! And then Alan Lee and Brian Froud both wrote the intro. So I've got all these amazing people just last week, Neil Gaiman tweeted, yay!
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
World domination is definitely close for you.
It's like Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah.
What we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Try to take over the world.
You're so much closer than they ever were.
But that's, what's the future? This is now my future. And maybe book 2, but I'm working on an oracle deck for it, for the food lines. But I'm also doing this.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of experimentation with oils. I'm doing sculpture. I'm doing, some new artwork for fold line stuff.
Yeah.
So
back to your artistic playground.
It's just playing around and just having fun, and that's the future. And I'll just keep doing this actually, and whatever happens. I don't have a clear goal. I have a general direction.
I think we can both say that our experiences with crowdfunding, with monetizing our personal projects, that in the future, at the very least, we won't be repeating those mistakes.
Oh, I definitely won't be repeating those mistakes. No, that's the thing. But I'm also out of everything I've learned from the past couple of years, is that trust your gut. Yeah. Your gut knows what way you need to go, and there's so many people. We were talking about style. So many people are like, oh, how do you find your style? Trust in yourself and just follow what you love to do.
Yeah, don't listen to that guilty little inner voice that artists have that are like, you need to do more. No. Add more tiers. Add more free sketches.
Yeah, do more. Do more.
Yeah, that voice is a very negative voice, and there's a deeper voice there that will tell you all right, this is what I can handle. This is what's right for me.
I think we need to have the balance. Balance is important. Whatever COVID, the whole lockdown, the whole COVID pandemic situation still taught me is just having the balance. Balance is crucial to be, keep creating.
Yeah.
And I love your little sign back there. It's like serenity now.
Serenity now.
I think that's a good thing. You know, 'cause
Yeah.
serenity now. That's
Serenity
the
now.
balance between work and play.
I
and-
hope people get the reference. I really hope
I
so.
didn't.
If anybody gets the reference, like, you have to let me know.
Drop it in the chat.
And drop it in the chat, in the comments,
We
whatever.
have to do a giveaway then, probably.
I'll give you my Serenity Now cross stitch for free.
No!
No. I'll just make 500 new ones. We're never doing that again.
That's a future.
All right, so your book, where can people get your book?
Probably in every single bookstore.
Every single bookstore?
It should be. It should
Are you
be.
serious?
You can just, go out and just ask for that book. But it's sold online.
Is it like on the standard, like Amazon? Dutch people, bol.com?
Yeah, it's all on the stuff. But go to your indie bookstore, go to your local bookstore and say, hey, I want to order that book, and they can order that book. Because I'm partial to little tiny bookstores and stuff where you can actually smell books and fondle them. That's one of the
your
places
local
that you can
bookstore.
still fondle things. Fondle things.
Books, specifically books.
Books.
For me, my Kickstarter for my new book launches on October 11th, 2021. This year. So, and that's also my birthday. So if you want to, do something for me on my birthday, you can back my Kickstarter. That would be great.
I'll back your Kickstarter and sing you a song. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would make me so happy.
Cool. I'll do that.
All right. Okay, so I guess that's everything we wanted to say, right?
I have more to say, but we've done more than last year, I think.
Yeah, we're on an hour and a half now.
It's like,
all right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you learned something from our talk. I think the main thing I just want to emphasize one more time to wrap it up. If you're thinking about creating a personal project, keep it authentic, keep it true to yourself, and if you're thinking about monetizing it, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, and always plan for the worst case scenario. Hopefully our stories will help you to kind of understand where that can go wrong and the lessons that we learned from it, and will help you with your future personal project.
and if it fails at first, don't give up. If it doesn't get, if the Kickstarter doesn't get funded, or your Patreon gets stuck at two patrons, which are your aunt and uncle, it doesn't mean the entire thing is not worth pursuing. It just keep trying, keep going. It'll happen. It just needs a little bit more time.
It's not a failure. It's more like a roadblock or a diversion on your.
It's like in a labyrinth.
Lessons.
Just
Like a labyrinth,
you hit one wall. Just track back and go the
We've
other
both
way.
gone through our phases where we thought we were failing, but it worked out in the end.
So often.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thanks
that's
so
a wrap.
much for watching, and all right. Well, I guess it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye. See you next year. Hopefully Livebox 2022. Hopefully live.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.